right, let's rip the Band-Aid off.
Okay.
You've seen it. How you feel?
It was wonderful.
Okay, awesome.
It was wonderful. I went and watched Dune at 3:30 on Friday. It was his first theatrical showing here anyway.
Yeah.
I went in with my expectations, feeling like my expectations had been backed up because a good buddy of mine who's also read Dune, but who is also very cynical, texted me and said he loved it. So I was like, okay, that's quite the endorsement. So I watched it at IMAX. Very much recommend doing so. And then, of course, I drove straight home and watched it again on HBO Max.
Right.
So what I did, and I almost turned it off. But when I started HBO Max, the subtitles were on.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost turned it off. And I was like, nah, maybe not.
Has a little flavor to it.
Let me recommend, if you watch Dune, watch it twice.
Okay.
Second time, watch it with the subtitles. I was blown away. There are things you are going to miss without the subtitles.
Right.
And it's not because you can't understand the dialogue. It's got to do with things that are happening in the background. I'm trying not to spoil this.
Yeah.
But it adds a whole new richness to the movie when you watch the subtitles.
Very cool.
So
Very
I was
cool.
like, whoa. And so I've been telling everybody, watch it again with the subtitles on. Watch it. And then once you know these things are there, you can go back and watch it again, knowing what's these things that, frankly, are very easily missed. They're very subtle. But the subtleness to it, it just brings out, this movie is at a whole new level.
Nice.
I think this movie is going to be talked about for a long time because it's just not your typical sci-fi action. I mean, it's got some depth and some richness to it that I've not seen in a long time. And there's a lot of things on top of just the quality of the storytelling itself and the quality of the movie. It looks fantastic. It just looks great. And the challenge, I don't think they could have done a better job of really stripping down the story. It's half the book. The first movie is half the book.
Which is what you expected.
Yeah. And the final scene is exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
The final scene, I thought, when I first heard this, I was like, okay, the final scene halfway through the book would be X, and that'd be a perfect end to the movie. And God damn it, it was exactly what it was. So that was satisfying. But Dune is very, very dense with a lot of very complicated and in-depth characters that have history. That's fucking hard to portray in a movie that's 2 hours without getting bogged down. I don't think they could have done a better job of doing that. They give you just enough to be, like the Bene Gesserit's a perfect example. They give you just enough in the movie to let you know, okay, there's something up about these women. These are not just a group of women. These aren't just nuns.
Right.
They're not space nuns. There's something else going on here. But it doesn't bog it down. So I cannot recommend the movie enough. I was actually a little emotional when I left because it was so good, and it's very rare to see something that means so much to so many people be treated with the utmost respect on the big screen. And a standout example of that is I'll compare the casting of Paul Atreides versus the casting of Wolverine on the big screen.
Yeah.
Paul Atreides is a 15-year-old boy in the book. He's a waif, thin. The last thing he'll ever be is intimidating or inspire any kind of leadership. It'd have been real easy to cast somebody that's 6'4",
superstar,
blonde, look, a grown. It's not what happened. He stayed true to, but that's again another in-depth dimension of the character. Meanwhile, we get in Wolverine. We got a 6 foot handsome Wolverine when we first saw him on the big screen.
Yeah,
Hugh Jackman
that's a Broadway dancer, and he did a fantastic job.
Hugh Jackman did a great job, but they didn't treat the character with the respect that it earned for decades.
Yeah.
They made their own version out of it. It's not what happened in Dune. Dune is very respectful, the utmost respect to the source material. And there's little things, like the Bene Gesserits, these women, not a stitch of makeup on one of them.
Good. That's exciting.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot put it over enough.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that also are rich in history and depth, this is the Southern Fried Geekery podcast, and as usual, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And we are Craigless today, but we're not going to let that stop us. He is on vacay, getting some him time in. So we just want to say, we miss him. Wish he was here, but we're gonna sally forth, I think is how you put it. If we were pirates, maybe.
That's what we're going to do anyway.
Yeah, we're going to do it. So I'm going to see Dune on Wednesday, and we are going to go see it in IMAX.
Oh, good idea.
So, my better half is a RN, and he's been working 5 12-hour shifts a week at the hospital. So we don't have a lot of time together. And his 2 days off have been Tuesdays and Wednesdays the past couple of weeks. Tuesdays, I'm literally in school from 8:30 in the morning till about 9:15 at night. I don't leave that building, so that's off. So we were looking at it, and he was like, yeah, we need to go see this on Wednesday. It's the only day we can do it together. I cannot tell you how hard it's been having HBO on my television. And as I've been watching The Sopranos, every time I log on to that app, Dune is just there. And it has taken a conviction, a constitution, and just willpower that I did not know I had to just not click on that and watch it. But he asked me not to. So I've done so.
Something, a buddy of mine, I'll say this too on it. A buddy of ours reached out to me and he's like, well, let me ask you this. Basically what he asked me is, can normies follow it?
Yeah.
Is basically what he asked. And I said, it's a movie you definitely need to be tuned into. This is not a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah.
This is not a popcorn, summer fun movie. There's stuff.
It's intricate. There's nuance to it.
So you need to pay attention. This is film. Yep. This is a story. So, I let him know that because apparently somebody's like, this is for people who know Dune, only you people. Well, so I reached out to another buddy of mine who has no knowledge of Dune other than me browbeating him to read the fucking book, and he never did. So he and his wife and his 2 very young daughters watched it. All 4 of them loved it.
Yeah.
Hated it when it ended. They wanted the movie to just keep going.
That's the mark of when you win. Like when you be in any kind of pop culture, when you hit that last mark, whether it's a film or a book or a comic or anything else, and you're just angry because it doesn't keep going. Yeah. That's when you've won. Like you won the game at that point. So I'm hell of excited. I can't wait to see it. The fact that you loved it because, you are connected to this thing, and just by knowing you for the years that I've known you, when you are connected to the thing, you can be critical of it when they don't miss it. And the fact that you have given it such a ringing endorsement, and the fact that, we're friends and I know your taste in things, that makes me incredibly excited. The Hubs has gone through last week when he was off work and rewatched all of like the Lord of the Rings just to get himself like in the mood to reach into like really intricate, detailed storytelling, long form storytelling, like specifically because he wants to go see Dune. And he knows that it's not the same thing, but it's just like, let me get my mind set for like this type of thing.
Things.
Yeah. So we're excited. I cannot wait. And I'm having a cheat day that day in my diet. So we're making a thing of it. I'm going to have a burger for the first time in 3 months. I'm fucking pumped. I'm going to have grease in my veins. I will punch you just because I can. That's the mood I'm going to be in. But hey, did you know that today is kind of a landmark for us, even without Craig here?
I heard about that.
Yeah, it is episode 200.
200.
That's pretty great. I'm pretty proud of the fact that we've managed to produce and put out 200 episodes. Even more proud of the fact that we have done it on a weekly basis. We have not missed a week. The only other podcast I know that does that is the EOC podcast, and those dudes are religious about it. And, I think it adds something to it when you just keep showing up week after week. Most podcasts don't survive past 3 episodes, and we're at 200. That's pretty great. And we've had some friends who have came and gone on the show, but for the most part, we've all done the bulk of it, and it's brought us closer together as friends. It's made us smarter as readers, I think. Hopefully the folks who listen to this, they've gotten some context out of it. They've grown as readers. They've enjoyed our conversations. But man, I love it. Like I've been doing this since I've gone back to school. It's been my it's been my escapism, just to get up and talk to you guys every time we get up together to talk. You know, we made it through COVID, doing stuff online, but even that was still like the refreshing 2 hours of my week. So
agreed.
You know, I wish Craig was here, but I want to say from my end of things, thank you. Like, thank you. I'm talking to you specifically, Matt and Craig, but also to everybody who listens to our show. Thank you, because this show means a lot to me, and doing this means a lot to me. So the fact that we've been able to continue and grow and do what we do, it holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, me too. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to talk about the things that I've read, whatever that may be, with other people that have read it as well.
Right.
And other people's appreciation, interpretation, lack of thereof, either one, is interesting to me. It's just fun.
Yeah.
It's something I've always really liked to do. So this is basically, you know, our version of a book club.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
One that which we, you know, put it out in the world and let other people get some, you know, appreciation of it, and open ourselves up to some criticism, which I think is, you know, it's brave, it's bold. Like, not a lot of people will do. Not a lot of people do that. So I think you have to be willing to have some thick skin to do that too. So,
sure.
But yeah, man, seriously, and again, thank you to everybody who listens to the podcast, you know, week in and week out. We appreciate it. Thank you for tolerating our ramblings. But speaking of ramblings, one thing we like to do to get everything kind of going, to get our blood pumping, so to speak, is drop a little short stack on folks. We like to talk about 3 comics that we read, you know, regardless of whether we liked it, disliked it, things we found interesting. We like to bring those to the table just to kind of get the conversation rolling. Before we dive into that, though, as always, this is going to be a little bit of a spoilery show, because there's no real way to talk about the meat of the books without mentioning details. So as we say the titles, if you haven't read them, you know, you might hit the pause button and go check them out. I always try to put the titles that we talk about in the show notes so nobody's caught off guard, but go check those things out, because we don't want to spoil anything for anybody. We want your appreciation of your escapism, of your time to be just rich, like, you know, Dune is. So we're going to keep coming back to that, but that's a little spoiler warning. I also will say that even though this is our 200th episode, you know, fireworks, big things, we are saving our like a monumental show, like, you know, a notable show for episode 208, which will be our 4-year mark. Craig said, "Hey, I can't be here this week," and also, you know, Matt's been busy. I've been swamped with stuff, so we really haven't had time to put anything together. But we are going to do so for episode 208, which is our 4-year anniversary. Going to try to do something cool with it. Have somebody on, maybe. We're still trying to put it all together, but be looking for that. Put that on your calendars. So you got 8 weeks. So, all right, Matt, drop a short stack on me, brother.
First of my short stack is from DC, the Legends of the Dark Knight series. As a reminder, there's a different creative team on each one of these, and they're very reminiscent of the old Dark Knight series that launched back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
They're short, independent stories. This one, the creative team, there's 2 different stories in this one. Sometimes there's more, but this creative team was Becky Cloonan as the writer, and it's like Dyke Ruan as the artist. And then the other story is done by Matthew Rosenberg with the artist of Cian Tormey. So these are fun. They're just short little one-offs of the Dark Knight. For whatever reason, I tend to appreciate those. They're just episodes. It just feels like little episodes within Batman's little world, instead of these, personally comes exhausting long arcs in
12,
Batman.
You know,
so these 14, I really appreciate. They're refreshing.
14 different 12-issue series featuring Batman. It's like, God, like, it takes $80 just to know what's happening in the Bat right now.
Yeah. That's a subject I could get on.
Right.
Also in my short stack is The Trial of Magneto. This is obviously from Marvel. This is number 3. The writer on this is Leah Williams. And the artists are Lucas Wernick and David Messina. Colors by Edgar Delgado. This continues to be a great story. Very interesting. You really learn some things about what has or has not been happening with Wanda lately, and what that's going to mean moving forward for Krakoa and whatnot. It's kind of funny to see the Avengers there on the island, too.
Yeah.
That whole interaction's been fun. And then also on my short stack,
Yes.
From Verotica Publishing, the latest issue of Verotica Revenge. This has got the color. I mean, the art. The 2 stories. First one, story by Glenn Danzig, of course. Art by Simon Bosley. And the second story is by Glenn Danzig. Art by Rafa Garez. These are stories in this comic book.
Kind of what you expected from Verotica.
So if you're an old mark like I am, apparently I got to admit it, and I'm picking up the Verotica stuff as it comes out because I was there when it launched, and couldn't have been more invested, and those hooks are still in me. Apparently, I have no excuse.
And dude, sometimes you don't need one. Like, look, you lit up like a Christmas tree when you held that book up. So, like, there are things to us that are like.
That was what I think that's what the kids would call a shit-eating grin.
Right? Yeah. It's just like, here's this thing that I still have, and it's like, as long as it brings you joy, like whether or not it's reminiscent of old days, whether you're just being nostalgic or what, it still brings you joy, right? Like, don't just wallow in it, revel in what it is.
For whatever reason, I can't let these things happen without experiencing them.
No, you have to. Sometimes that's a baseline where everything else feels better afterwards. You can only go up from there. But no, dude, I mean, it's Bisley, so at least it's great to look at.
Yeah.
So
the art's great in it.
So I am still playing catch up as usual. I'm about a week, 2 weeks behind on my comic stack just by the nature of things. So I'm just getting to some stuff. Have not read Trial of Magneto. Cannot wait. It's like I'm going to get to it today or tomorrow. Solidly on my things that I am giddy about. But some things I have read this past week. I read the second issue of Jeff Lemire's Mazebook. This story is great. It's Jeff Lemire doing the story and the art. We haven't had him doing his own his own thing in a good while. It's fun, kind of what you expect from a Jeff Lemire book. He turns the thumb screws on in the second issue. Got me all up in my emotions. The story is about a man whose daughter has passed away and he will not let her go, and he is in a mix of what could be, a very real, depending on how Jeff Lemire goes with it, sense of maybe there's a supernatural thing here happening, or just he's unable to let his daughter go, and he thinks that she is still alive somewhere, or there's some way he can reach her inside this quote-unquote maze that is the world. So he's kind of, is this a supernatural bent, or is this a man just sinking into his own psychosis, dealing with grief? Yeah. It hurts. So pick it up. Second on my short stack is the final issue of Strange Adventures from DC Comics. This is a 12-issue series by Tom King, Mitch Gerrits, and Evan Doc Shaner, with Mitch Gerrits and Doc Shaner sharing the artistic duties depending on where the story takes place. Fantastic story. Probably is going to read better in 12 issues, like in a collected edition, than it did episodic, because there's just a lot in here that he plays with. And the story is not necessarily linear, which is why you get 2 main artists on it. It is stunning work. It went from being something I didn't know what it was going to be about to a little mix of a detective story that, of course, features Adam Strange and his whole backstory, but also features Mr. Terrific, which is pretty cool. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about the stories that we tell about war, and who is seen in the light of history as being the victor, or being worthy of the cause, is usually told by the victors, and playing on both sides of that story, and how even the quote unquote good guys commit atrocities, and so it really is playing with that, and it's playing about the love of family and things you left behind and stuff. So highly recommend this. It's really, really nuanced, but I think you'll enjoy it. If you're not a fan of Tom King's like a lighter work, like even if you're not a fan of his Batman run, stuff like that, this is a little bit heavier stuff. So check that out. And then third on my short stack was a surprise. I didn't know this was coming. I had no idea this was happening. Mainly because it's been missing for a couple of years now. But Archie Horror got their quote unquote stuff together and came out with the 9th issue of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I've been waiting on this for a couple years now. I feel like it was a lot of fun. So like I said, it hasn't been on the shelf for a little bit. It's got the story is by Roberto Aguirre's Sacasa, with artwork by Robert Hack and letters by Jack Morelli. This it picks up where it left off. For those of you who remember way back in the day, Sabrina's boyfriend Harvey got offed, and she brought him back. With magic, you can't do anything without paying a price. So it's picking up where it left off with that. They did a good job of giving us a rundown page just because it has been so long. But it's stunning. They pull elements from the TV show, the Netflix series that was fun. The artwork is gorgeous. Madam Satan in this book is a weird mix of like MILF sexy. And
sounds like a natural to me.
It's awesome.
Madam Satan.
Yeah. There's a half snake succubus, and oddly enough, Sabrina's father.
Was this written by Glenn Danzig?
No, it should have been. Yeah, I think you might dig it. Oddly enough, Sabrina, her dad, being a very powerful warlock, is back in a way that's going to make some really awkward moments. He is embodying the body of Harvey Kinkle, who is his daughter's boyfriend that she brought back to life, that is in love. There's no moments to where they like link up. He does nail some other chick in a broom closet though. So it's going to be weird.
Bad move, Dad.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. So I can't wait to see what they do with it. I love the artwork on this. It's got the Sabrina, like it's the visage is steeped in like the 1950s that you've seen in Sabrina. It's just bombshell-esque type figures. So
nice.
And it's got that Francavilla vibe to it, even though he's not on the book. So highly recommend it. Find this, and if you can find the other 8 issues, go for it. But who knows when we're getting the next one? So it might just be a self-torture to get locked into this. But
wow,
fun stuff. Very fun stuff. So, okay, well, let's talk about a book we both read this week. How about we jump on it? You want to introduce this book because you were kind of excited about it.
So this caught my attention because it's a new series by Erik Larsen of Image Comics. And so I'm like, wow, I mean, the guy's been working on the Savage Dragon for over 20 years. Yep. And he's been on schedule for the most part for 20 years, writing and illustrating that book. So I'm like, what prompted him to do something new? So I had to pick it up to see what that was all about. And I've said several times, of all the Image founders, going back, if you go back and read the Image founders book, I think most people will agree that Savage Dragon holds up the best.
Yeah, and which is why it's one of the few that's still around. Yeah, that and the fact that he's on the board of directors. But
and he's retained 100% control.
Yeah,
everybody else, quit illustrating it, quit writing it, one or the other or both. He's the only one that kept doing the thing just because he wanted to do the thing. So yeah, that's what. And I was misinformed.
It's the same. I know we're going with this.
I thought this was a Jack Kirby thing.
Yeah,
and I don't remember why I thought that, but I was led to believe that. But it indeed was not.
Yeah.
We can go into that later, but that's what compelled me to pick the book up, was something new from Erik Larsen.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, because you pointed my attention to it. So let's just kind of get into the meat of it, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of those things that you just mentioned. Like you said, this is Ant. The story, art, and color is by Erik Larsen. The flats are by Mike Torres. Letters by Jack Morelli, with Josh Eichhorn listed as the hardworking farm boy, based in part by the work of and the creator of the original character, Mario Gully. So this is basically a recap / retelling / a way to put the continuity of this character together in one story to build a platform off of. Ant is a female superhero, very much based in and centered around the early 90s version of these superhero comics, which is why it fits in well, and originally fit in well at Image Comics, although this is a different conception of what the original work that Mario Gully did. And so Ant starts off this story. You just get a great shot of her. She is very kinetic, very much in motion, is jumping around, has her suit, which is a very skin tight, it's almost like she's not wearing any clothes, but it's just covering her bright red with little ant horns. And she's gonna save the day. She's gonna save the world from everything. And the book jumps you in kind of in media res, like she's right off the bat just beating up every member of her rogues gallery. Characters like Randy Dandy. You have a character called Pussyfoot, which is the cheetah. All of these kind of derivative characters, Yuck It Up, who one might imagine might be a version of the Joker. And she's just stomping it to them. But then the book takes a turn, and it kind of takes you back, and it walks you through the history of this character from when she was a young girl. And this is actually tethered into the original book and the way the original book was imagined. This young woman grew up. She was raised by her father, who was he was a scientist guy who he went out every day and worked and was doing all kinds of cool things. But when she was left to her own devices in her free time, she would write and color in this journal. And as a young girl, would draw these adventures of this little red-clad figure called the Ant, and as almost kind of a predestination thing, or she grew up to be this character. While all this is happening, of course, she's dealing with all the rest of the childhood stuff that you can kind of imagine. She's bullied. She is the neighborhood kids pick on her because she doesn't have a mom, and because she's the young black girl in the white neighborhood. And they're just the way that children can be cruel is something that she goes up with. Meanwhile, Dad is doing his thing, working in a science lab, and inventing something for a kind of a clandestine group. This evil Machiavellian type organization that behind the scenes are hell-bent on causing the apocalypse, not because they want to see all of the world burn, but just specifically because they want to see the world burn in a way that they can pick up the pieces and control the ashes. And so he's developed some type of serum for not cereal. There's no Frosted Flakes in the book. Sorry. Some type of serum for them that is going to, he's convinced that they are going to do the right thing, and that's why he's working for them. But he doesn't understand what's happening behind the scenes. But baby girl is just a girl, right? She is young and she's fragile, and something, she has a series of events in her life that cause her harm. At one point in time, she's even hit by a car, and of course Dad comes in, and it's this moment where he realizes, I can't protect you always. As she grows older, the same bullies do the same things. They attack her, they beat her up behind the playground. They just really, really shitty things that make it. They do a really good job of illustrating that she has not had an easy life. Like, she is just constantly embattled. So, like you might imagine, things kind of come to a head with Dad's job, right? Where he's working in this lab, he's made this thing. The lab steps in and they say, "Hey, you've made this serum now. It's ours. Like, we're shutting everything down. You're fired. Get out." And because they're evil bad guys, they do evil bad guy things, and they start taking out the different scientists that work for them. And eventually, they come for our characters. They come for Dad. They come for Ant, who is not Ant at this time. And they Molotov cocktail their apartment. And they roll in hot with guns, and they shoot Dad. But Dad managed to sneak some of the serum out of the lab, and he's got it in his pocket. And his intention is to give it to himself. But he is just riddled with bullets and unable to. And he falls on top of his daughter, and injects her with whatever this bright red goo is, and that's where her origin story. That's how she gets her powers. They manifest almost immediately. The little ant prongs, antennae, burst forth from her head, and she just eviscerates all of these assassins who came to get her. And she's able to pull her dad out and get him out in the street to the paramedics. And that's really where the story takes off. That's the origin of Ant. We now see this superhero comeuppance moment for this character, and Eric Larson's going to branch out from there and show you what she can do and who she's going to be, and really build on this story. Weirdly enough, she wakes up the next day in an alley with the leader of this clandestine organization, a guy named Apollo Steele, looking at her, and she's in her human form, telling her he works for the government and that he was a friend of her father's, who, isn't coming back, it doesn't feel like. So we're going to see where she goes. Obviously, he's taking advantage of her situation, and gonna try to use her to his own ends, and we'll have to see if she can avoid that and continue to be the type of person she always wanted to be, and she always imagined herself as she was a young girl drawing in these comics. So, Matt, I'll let you kick this off, man. Tell me kind of like where your headspace is at, what you appreciated the most from this book, things that, just go off on it for a minute.
I mean, the standout for me was the art in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, just to be brutally honest, the story was pretty standard.
Yeah, it was. It was very formulaic.
There's very standard formulaic superhero origin story. Felt very, very old school. The art, at first I was like, whoa, when I looked at it, because it didn't look like the art I was expecting. I was expecting to see Savage Dragon art.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a semblance of that because it is Erik Larsen and he is drawing in his style. But he inks this differently, and I can only assume he's doing this with the intention of it not looking like the interior pages of a Savage Dragon book. So that I can appreciate, that he wanted the book to have its, much as it could, its own identity.
It almost feels like it's a looser style than I've seen Erik Larsen do. Like some of these pages, I was reminded of, who's the artist that's doing the Second Coming book? What I'm drawing a blank.
Well, there's two artists on that book. Richard Pace.
That's who I'm thinking of.
And Leonard Kirk.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Richard Pace.
Richard Pace, yeah.
Like Richard Pace does this thing where when he inks it, you can still see some of the pencil lines, and it feels like it was done with like a very, very thin tip. And there's some of that in here. He's very loose. He's not he's not afraid to give it some texture.
It looks like he inked this with a pen.
Yeah, like a felt tip pen or something.
As opposed to something that had a nib where there's all the lines are uniform. So it's just got a very different look to it.
Yeah, no, that was the same way. It was not what I was expecting. And some of the perspectives that he gives in this book, almost a little in the vein of like Frank Miller. Like there's like if you look at the way that he draws some of the faces of Hannah, the young girl, and the way he portions out the eyes and the mouth and everything. There's all, like, it reminds me of some of the stuff we've seen Frank Miller do. Be it Dark Knight or even in Sin City, in the way that he drew some of the characters there.
See, all the character designs, Erik Larsen's eyes are always a standout. Everything looks Erik Larsen. It's just the inking. The inking is the only thing that I see that's different. I mean, all the action scenes, everything's textbook Erik Larsen to me. It's just the inking is what really makes the book look unique to itself.
Okay. Because
he typically does not ink in these thin lines throughout everything.
Yeah.
A lot of his, go back and look at his art, and I haven't looked at it in a long time, but it was always, the inking was varied. Heavier lines here, lighter lines there, as opposed to this type of style.
Almost uniform throughout.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, look, the lines are uniform. There's no difference in thickness to add weight anywhere. Yeah.
No, I'm right there with you. It kind of took me aback, but I enjoyed it. Like it was fun to look at, and it reminds me of. And it's Erik Larsen, so I think this is just because, there's a lot of context that goes into saying it's Erik Larsen, but it reminds me of the 90s. Like there's some stuff in here that seems very much in that vein. Like at the time that this book was originally written, and I think he's trying to give it some of that look. I'd be curious to go back and see some of the original issues and see how it lines up with that art. I wonder if he's like drawing and pulling anything from it. As far as like a visual tether back to that. And I really enjoyed going back, and it's funny, you're talking about the final product, but when they did something really cool with this book where they put sketches and thumbnails in the back of it, and the lines in the sketches and thumbnails are so much weightier than what you get in the finished product. And there's so much more, there's shading. And I think that was a lot of it. There's very little in the way of shading in the finished product, but you see way more of it in these thumbnails and these sketches as you're seeing how he developed the story and how he, put together this narrative and got practice drawing the character. You of course get some of these kind of iconic Image-esque 90s poses from the character as she like leaps off the page as if she's like reaching towards the reader, and that kind of thing. But I love that they put these process shots in the back of it. That was a really interesting look at Erik Larsen doing his thing and developing.
With so many of these just look like Jack Kirby poses. Of course, and Erik Larsen's a Jack Kirby
enthusiast,
enthusiast to say the least. I mean, he patterned his whole style after Jack Kirby. The telltale one is the typical pose with the fist towards the reader. That's the most telltale Jack Kirby pose there is, and Erik Larsen has used that one a lot.
So you're talking about Jack Kirby. You and I were both under the misconception that Ant is somehow tethered to Jack Kirby, and apparently we could not, like, it's just not. No. And I wonder, like, I'm trying to remember why you and I like thought that, because I remember we've had this conversation before, and we were trying to figure out where we may have heard that or what we thought it was. The only thing I can figure is that when I think of, I'm an art nerd, so like I love watching shows about original comic art and stuff like that. Erik Larsen is one of the few people who owns like entire issues that Jack Kirby did, like the original art for it. So he has spent a lot of money, or one might say invested a lot of money, because he could get a return on it like nobody's business. But so he owns entire issues of books that Jack Kirby drew, the original art on them. He's done a really good job of amassing and collecting that. I don't know if anybody else can say that, that they have that. I have no idea. I'm sure there are some collectors that do. But I guess my brain, because I tether conversations with Larsen to the fact that he owns so much Kirby art and talks about it and has shown it off, that I just assumed maybe this had something to do with it. I
could have sworn I read that this was tethered to Kirby at some point. I wouldn't have just assumed that, but for whatever reason, that was completely wrong. But I could have sworn that I read it somewhere.
It feels like a Kirby-esque kind of character, though. It really does. But in fact, it's not. It was this is the baby and the brainchild of Mario Gully, and really cool kind of backstory and history to it is that Mario invented this character and really came up with the concept of it while he was in jail. He got busted on some shit and had to serve some time. And he started creating this comic as a way to, A, pass the time, but B, to entertain himself. I'm sure it was some type of like therapeutic exercise, and other people who were in jail with him would read it and they would like it. And so he reached out to Image Comics, because this was early 90s. This was right when Image Comics was emerging, when the folks like flocked away from the big two or from Marvel specifically and started it. And he reached out and he showed it to them and was trying to get it off the ground, and was successful in that, in the sense that the Image Comics did. I think Archaea published it first, but Image Comics did eventually take it and put it together, and they teamed him up with some different artists, and there was kind of a hodgepodge of continuity, like nothing necessarily meshed up, because he had worked on this in different places and he never kind of imagined it as a long form story. But what was really cool is that the Ant, like in the original Gully work, the Ant only ever appeared in the journal of Hannah, of the daughter. Ant was not a real superhero. It was something that Cully had invented, like based on his own daughter, like his own child, who he was, obviously was missing while he was in jail. And he showed this character, this young woman being developed, and establishing her own creativity in this journal. And the original Ant was kind of centered around that, which, Larsen and the other editors and the other writers at Image didn't really know what to do with, because, Ant wasn't actually on the page, and Ant couldn't go and interact with characters like Spawn or Savage Dragon, wouldn't show up any of the Silvestri books. So they were like, we don't know how to necessarily do this. But it sounds like from reading some of the back matter, Cully found he found himself either in hard times or just at a place that he didn't want to carry on with this anymore. And so he reached out to Larson. He's like, dude, you want to buy this? Like, you just want to buy this wholesale and you can have the rights to it, do whatever you want to it. I trust you with this thing. I don't want anybody else playing with it. I don't want other people who weren't there at its origin and didn't connect to it and don't know what I wanted with it to corrupt it in any kind of way. And Eric just said, yeah, sure, I'll buy it. And so this is, it sounds like he went back and finished an unfinished run that Image had done, like wrote the last issue of it, and just like capped it off, and then is just restarting from here. And this is where he's going to launch that. I'm curious to see what he does with it, because this is, like you said, this feels very formulaic, very origin, but I don't feel like Eric Larson would be content with that to just tell a formulaic superhero story. So I think he's going to pull some type of shenanigans and do something really cool. Or at least I hope he will. We'll have to see, because he doesn't seem like the person who's just going to be content with writing another superhero story. Like, he's already done that. And he doesn't seem like a person who wants to retread ground that he's already walked down. Like, he's somebody who always, at least to me, seems to be looking forward in his own endeavors. Like, where are we going next with this? Into new places. Yeah. Which is why Savage Dragon, and even though I'm not a Savage Dragon mark or somebody, like, that's why that character has evolved, and not, like, it's not even the same original Savage Dragon. Like, the characters come and go, and they do different things, and they have different personalities. So he's always just pushed the subject matter forward. Yep. So very curious to see what he does with this.
Yeah, me too.
And again, I like the style. It's weird. I think I like this Eric Larson more so than some of the Eric Larson I've seen recently. Really? I don't know why. And that's not taking anything away from that. It's one of those things, like, I've always said of Savage Dragon, it's not my cup of tea, but I respect it. But this is more, like, visually, this does more for me. Yeah. You got any final thoughts or last words you want to...
No, I'm looking for see where it goes. One thing that I appreciate about Eric Larson is everything I've ever seen him do. What it does lack in is pretension. Yeah. He does this for fun. Yep. He wants it to be good, but fun. And I've never seen him do anything that felt the least bit pretentious. So that's something I appreciate.
Well, except for some videos where he decides to take it upon himself to correct other people's work.
Yeah, those I haven't seen. I can only speak to his comic work. Yeah.
So other than that, there's very little in the way of pretension. No, I think I'm going to add this to my pull list.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going to check out. I'm going to at least give it another issue or two, see what's up.
I want to see what he does with it. Well, you have got a book sitting in front of you that you look eager to tell me about. So why don't you jump into it? Let us know what it is.
This book is by, this is from the 2000 AD universe. Mm-hmm. These days, the 2000 AD universe is published by a studio called Rebellion, out of the UK. This is Slaine, Dragon Tamer. I love that title, by the way. It's just a badass title. This is by the great Pat Mills. The art is by Leonardo Manco. Excuse me. So this was originally published in the pages of the weekly 2000 AD book and has been collected here. This is the final Slaine story, at least the final one that at least will be written by Pat Mills, as he reports it. Also listed as other artists in this is Chris Weston and Kyle Hotz. I think that's mostly because there's two other extra stories in the back. Because it seems pretty apparent that Leonardo Manco does the main Dragon Tamer story. As it's listed. Originally, apparently, this was an all black and white. I would love to see the original black and white because, the artwork is incredible in this book. The artwork is incredible in this book. Hell of a lot of work went into this. A lot of detail. And apparently, he went back and added the colors for this release. That's what I read in Pat Mills' foreword. But for those of you not familiar, Slaine was created by Pat Mills and Angie Kincaid. years and years ago, back in the very, very early days of 2000 AD, Angie Kincaid at the time was Pat Mills' wife. She was primarily a children's story illustrator, and she gets most of the credit for Slaine's design. Pat Mills gave her some ideas, and she ran with it, and then in some instances just created things, whole cloth on her own. So he continually makes sure that she gets credit for his design. The Slaine character, Pat Mills is Irish, and he created this character based it upon research he had did on his Irish heritage and their myths and legends, and brought that into a world of set in historic Ireland. And I guess I would describe this universe as fictional history combined with high fantasy.
Yeah,
is how I would categorize this. And Slaine is a barbarian character. There's a lot you notice a lot in Conan, the most notable barbarian character. Conan has got a little bit of Irish roots as well. Conan is an Irish name. Crom is an old Irish mythical figure.
Yeah, Crom Cruach.
Yeah. Yep. So you see that mentioned every once in a while in the book because it's the same heritage.
Right.
But this has got the Slaine universe has got a lot more depth mythologically. There are druids, there are drones. The characters are very weird. I mean, this shit is weird.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I like about it so much. It's just so strange and just owns this weird mythical heritage. This story itself is about, and of course, Slaine is a member of a Irish tribe. He pretty much throughout his history is a lone wanderer. He does have one constant companion that's like this elfish goblin type character, mischievous thief. Sometimes it's not totally clear why he keeps this guy around, other than to make sure nobody cuts his throat when he's sleeping.
Yeah.
This little character serves as the narrator for the Slaine stories by and large. A lot of times he's been portrayed as the chronicler of Slaine stories. And this story is about a time and period where the Roman legions have captured Albion, which is what the area of the UK was called. Prehistory, I guess.
I was going to say pre the Romans.
Yeah,
coming in.
When the Romans invaded the barbarians, it was that area was called Albion.
Yeah,
or Albion, and this is the time period where the Romans are inhabiting their lands and fighting the local tribes, and here they have a stable of dragons. And they use this stable of dragons to keep quashing the tribal uprising. Slaine is a descendant, offspring of a mythical, magical druid and a woman who was also had some magical earth powers. So he is not immortal, but he was born with the web of the weird, as they call it, in his blood. And one of the things that he has is what's called a warp spasm. Warp spasm is when the goddess of the earth moves through him and he transforms into when Pat Mills created it, he called it a incomprehensible, monstrous form. And he is all but invulnerable when he's in this form and the earth goddess is moving through him. So it's a lot of fun when that's illustrated because every artist has their own little take on it.
Right.
Most of them are very similar to the original that Angie Kincaid developed. So you see a lot of that in this because when he warp spasms, he's fighting the dragons. And when he's outnumbered and so on. So he's got a little bit of a supernatural bent to him because of his heritage. But him fighting these Romans in this book, there are some great battle scenes. He carries a battle axe. His main weapon is a battle axe, not a sword. His battle axe is called Brain Biter. That's the name he gives his battle axe.
It doesn't get drunk off blood, does it?
It does not. His battle cry, Slaine's battle cry is "Kiss my axe," as he loves to swing it and decapitate different
things.
Anything in his wake. There's some, the artwork in this.
Yeah, before we get out of here today, I want to take some pictures of this for our Instagram page.
Yeah, it's incredible.
People should see this.
There's this one page, and I didn't notice this in my first reading. I went back and read it again. He is spearing 3 different Roman soldiers, and if you look closely at his face is concealed by the shadow of a pained hand. Yep. I thought that was an excellent, excellent touch. So if the art, you can go back and look again and again at this. It's just incredible.
It's gorgeous. Yeah. So it's almost got like an early Sandman, that there are some images there that are reminiscent, especially when they're drawing this one figure. But as far as the character design, the way that Slaine's eyes, he has the markings on his eyes. It reminds me a little bit of like Lobo in that sense.
Well, what it should, what it brings to light for me is Braveheart.
Yeah.
It's the war paint that they used to, now Braveheart was actually about the Scottish, but the Irish very similar as far as their war paint goes. He has war paint. His hair spikes on end. Again, that's got a lot to do with his heritage.
There's one scene of his face where he's just like in the middle of bloodlust and insane.
Yeah. When he's, again, I cannot imagine the time it took to illustrate these pages, because they're incredible. They're detailed. There's a lot. These battle scenes with the dragons, between the dragons and the men, between the men and the men. There's so much. This is a hell of a send-off.
I'm like you. I would love to see this in black and white. I'm sure they'll print it at some point, because those pages have just got to be absolutely stunning.
Yeah, this is incredible looking stuff.
Yeah.
Slaine looks like an absolute madman. And Slaine's character design, I've always freaking loved his character design. We mentioned the war paint. He's got a belt that's a warthog, and the tusks come out from the belt, I guess you would say the belt buckle.
Right.
It's just a great freaking character design. So I've always really liked this character. There is a book that Pat Mills is just about to release. He just announced you can pre-order it, called Kiss My Axe, The History of Slaine.
Okay.
I'm grabbing this book as soon as possible.
So I will as well. So Slaine is not a character that I'm really familiar with. I knew it existed, but I have not actually looked at or seen any of the Slaine stuff until you and I became friends. So you've definitely turned me on to the character. And as much of a Conan mark as I am, it's absolutely it's of that same variety of stories that is laced into the Conan stories that I would adore. So there's absolutely nothing keeping me from reading this.
Some things about Slaine that's different than Conan. What drives him is different.
Yeah.
He loves the battle. He loves fighting.
Right.
And he gets, that's a thrill for him. He looks forward to it. He looks for enemies to fight. Conan doesn't look for enemies to fight.
No, he
does it if he needs to.
His goal is usually making money.
Yeah.
And so, but if he can do that with the path of least resistance, he will. He's a very cunning character. He's a thief, right? So he's a cunning and quiet character when he can be. And he's a headlopper when he needs to be.
Yeah. Slaine's whole thing is fighting oppressors.
Right.
That's throughout his history. That is what he's doing. He is fighting oppressors, and it's a lot of fun. But it is a barbarian story. But throughout it all, it just feels much more tribal than traditional barbarian.
Right.
It's a different take on a barbarian story. Very much is. It feels very tribal. And I really appreciate it. I've read a lot of it.
So when you say that, does it feel, when you think about, and I'm going to go back to Conan because that's kind of my center of comparison to these things. Conan's very vast. Conan, it is a broad world that he walks through. When you say tribal, does it feel like a smaller global scope?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much throughout his history that I've ever read, he is sticking to his Irish homeland and he is defending it against all comers. That's really what he's not going off in far adventures looking for. No, he's at home to either defend his clan or pursuing enemies before they get to his clan and so on.
Okay, that clarifies it for me. That's what I've always wondered, is he a wanderer? Is he an adventurer? But the adventure, it sounds like the adventure comes to him.
The adventure, only in the way that he is an adventurer, but it's all within his own homeland.
Right.
He's just not going off into far off worlds to look for adventure outside. He's wanting to, frankly, kill, fight, and repel invaders or the evil Drunes or the Druids in his own homeland.
Yeah. He gets to go to sleep in his bed every night. I respect that.
To one form or another. Yeah.
Sticking to the rivers and the lakes that he's used to.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But there's a lot of, if you go back and read the old Slaine stuff, Angie Kincaid, again, she was a children's illustrator, so her take is interesting. A lot of different artists have touched Slaine. Mike McMahon, his take on Slaine is really interesting because he illustrates it and it looks like wood cutting.
Yeah.
It's at first time I looked at it, I was like, ugh, I didn't like it at all. But then I understood what he was trying to do. He was trying to illustrate it as a wood cutting type art. And once you kind of put yourself in that mindset and realize he's trying to illustrate somebody else chronicling Slaine's adventures of that time, it takes on a new meaning.
Right. There's a new context to the way it looks.
And that's what's fun about a lot of the 2000 AD stuff is so many different artists have touched it. And in all the original early days 2000 AD artists were just fantastic, but very unique.
Yeah.
You're not seeing this kind of artist in the States. Pat Mills, when he started 2000 AD, he wanted everything to have an edgy, unique, punk rock look to it, and it does. Mike McMahon, Kevin O'Neill,
Esquiera,
Carlos Esquiera, of course, Kennedy. Oh, there's a guy. His last name's Kennedy. He's a big one. There's too many to name. Brian Boland came later. Now Brian Boland stuff looks, you could argue looks, much more American in his style. But it still
has its roots, though. You can still very much see where it stems from and where he cut his teeth at. And this, I think, you can say something similar about like the heavy metal magazine and the type of art that you saw from there that wasn't really like anything else we see before.
It wasn't, but the heavy metal always had a much more Boris Vallejo feel to it, and just very polished art. Great stuff. 2000 AD was supposed to be dirty, punk rock, edgy, feel to it, and it just gave it a very unique energy that I just love going back and looking at.
So it's funny, obviously when I think of 2000 AD, I think of Dredd.
Yeah.
And I haven't read a ton of Dredd, but I love the artists and I love to flip through it. I've started buying these books that you can find every once in a while, and they're oversized, but they're thick, and it is just like showing you the black and white works of some of these Dredd artists. Like I've got one that's Carlos Esquera. I've got 2 or 3 of them at home, and I don't even know how many there are in this series or where you can find them at. I don't even know if they're in print anymore. But that's like, I love those.
Oh,
I love cracking those things open. And even though I, I don't have much tethered to the character outside of what I know from the film. And when I say the film, I mean Dredd. I'm not talking about the thing that was made in the past that we, shall not mention. But, the newer iteration was really my first like Dredd story. And then going back and, being the type of people that we are, finding different books and different story arcs to read and having people suggest different things.
John Wagner's the man when it comes to Dredd. John Wagner's the man.
So I've read some of but there's so many just great people who have worked on on all of these 2000 AD titles.
Yeah,
like it's almost a who's who of just European wins. I don't know how else to put it. And just the level of detail and stuff and the texture that they put into the book that you're talking about, into the Slaine book, is, like I said, I want to take some pictures of that because it's insane.
Yeah, and the book itself is for what it is. This is a hardback book, 96 pages, and the cover price is $22.99. Very, very moderately priced for what it is.
It's oversized too.
Yeah,
so
oversized hardcover. Yeah, priced like a paperback.
Nice. Yeah, I may be ordering that this afternoon.
I dug it.
I just want to look at it.
It's a full throttle ride, though, man. There's not a lot of quiet moments in this.
But that's what you want in a book. So, look,
and that's what a Slaine story typically is.
Yeah.
It's like full on.
I love character, right? Like, I love nuance. I love books that have that human feel to it, and I read those books. I don't go to Conan for that. I don't go to a character like Slaine for that. There are certain, I don't want that in Lobo in DC. There are certain characters that I want it to be, foot through the floor, all gas, no brakes. And because I can get that other stuff in other places, and I know where to look for that. But I need to tap into Slaine and learn more about it, and remedy my ignorance of it.
It's a lot of fun.
Before he comes at me with an axe, or before you come at me with an axe.
The Brain Biter. I love that name. Nice.
So, how many of these? Because I know you've brought in a Slaine hardcover before. How many of them do you have? I mean, is it just a couple?
I don't know how many I have. I've got several collections. The 2000 AD stuff is problematic because when they collect, they'll do a collected story of their characters. You can go buy the first collected edition, collect trade paperback, and then you go buy the second one, and the second one will have half the stories from the first one in it.
Right,
they just did a very poor job of collecting these and releasing them, so it's discouraging to keep going out and buying them because you're like, what? Half of it. Yep. So I don't know how many I have altogether. The hardcover stuff, the collected stuff, I probably have 4 or 5, and then I've got some. A lot of those 2000 ADs, no matter what the storyline was re-released throughout Quality Comics, Fleetway, DC re-released some 2000 AD stuff in the past. So I've bought some single issues. I've got a bunch of single issues of Dread that were released throughout the years, collected editions. But again, it's problematic if if you're going out to say collect trade paperbacks of anything that's 2000 AD because it's 2000 AD has got a history of really poor management.
I wonder if that's just a States thing. I wonder if it's any better over in the UK.
It's the same. I mean, it's the same collection.
Okay, is it?
It's the same collection except for the the 2000. The Fleetway Comics and Quality Comics stuff was released for the States.
Gotcha.
Because 2000 AD itself, you can't really get it in the States.
Yeah.
Especially back, in the heyday of 2000 AD. It just wasn't released here. It was a weekly book, which is crazy to me, but it was a weekly book released in the UK pretty much only.
Yeah. Makes sense. I'm glad you got your hands on it.
Yeah, me too. It was definitely worth the read.
Nice.
It was better than I expected it to be. And I expected to like it.
Yeah.
But the artwork blew me away.
Isn't that a great feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah. Had a similar experience with a series that just came out that I'm going to talk about for a little bit. And that is none other than Superman and the Authority, which came out from DC Comics, just wrapped up. It was 4-issue series. Written by Grant Morrison, art by the great Michael Janin, Jordi Belair doing the colors, and Tom Napolitano on the letters. So when I say that I didn't expect that it was way better than what I expected, that is always for me tethered with the fact that Grant Morrison's writing it. I never really know what to expect from Grant Morrison. Some of their stuff I really, really enjoy. Some of their stuff I just can't read. And that's just, for me personally, that's not saying it's bad. It's just their run on Green Lantern is a perfect example. Season 1 I thought was impeccable storytelling. Season 2 was just a wash for me. I just couldn't with it. And I think that's true a lot of Grant Morrison stuff. But this was great. Like this whole story really wrapped me into it. And I think part of that was was my appreciation, enjoyment of some of these characters that he's using, but also because it's just Grant Morrison. There is a spot that is very specific in Grant Morrison's writing where it is just peak. Like, this is just the great Grant Morrison stuff. And it's very, like, you got to get very honed into it. And sometimes he goes way left field, but it feels controlled, reined in a little bit. And that's what this story is. So, like I said, this is the last of a 4-part series. Where we've been at, this features a Superman that is not the Superman that we know. He is an older Superman, and as he has aged, for some reason, his powers have waned. He's kicking it. I don't know if this is where outside of continuity this takes place, but Superman is, he's turned into a fairly good looking daddy. Like, he's got, like, the white hair, kind of the Reed Richards look. Yeah. Well, he's not quite Polly.
Oh, okay.
But he keeps it trimmed. It's almost like Mr. Fantastic. But yeah, he doesn't have the awesome, like, Polly hair from The Sopranos. But yeah, that's what he's kicking around in. And he essentially lives in something called Fort Superman now. It's basically the Fortress of Solitude, but not. He's turned it into a lot of things, and he's collected all of his stuff there, but he's using it as a base of operations to, in his time, battle climate change and stuff that's really messed up the world. And part of what's going on with this is some of his old villains have caught on to the fact that he is not the godlike Superman that he used to be, that his powers have made him, he's still a badass, don't get me wrong, like, he still has some things, but he's just, he's an older man, and really that's what the story is about, is people who can't, men who can't do the feats that they used to do, who are having to accept that they've grown a little bit older.
No, you don't say.
Yeah. So wake up in the middle of the night, got to go to the bathroom a few extra times, something that I think we all experience, but as they've come to him through the 4-issue series, you realize that the main villain, or at least what you think is the main villain, is the Ultra Humanite, and he has taken the body of people like Grodd, and he's taken the body of Solomon Grundy, these undying just things, and he's put his own brain in it. So the Ultra Humanite has taken over all these other villains and is just throwing everything that he can at the world to break it. So Superman needs to build a team around himself, and he does so using some of the Authority characters and some of the DC characters, but people that you might not expect. So, like, obviously he pulls in Midnighter and Apollo, which is a great way to get me on a book anytime that they show up, but he pulls together Solomon Black, so just these people that you wouldn't expect to see him team up with. He pulls in Steel, but it's the Steel from the 52, so it's Steel's niece, who is now doing anything and just being a badass superhero in her own right. He introduces some new characters that we might not have seen before. It's all kind of fun. What this boils down to, though, is that there are the Ultra Humanite has been used in this, and there's actually somebody behind the Ultra Humanite, which is layers upon layers of villains, and it's Brainiac, and Brainiac has just gone above and beyond to, like, lace in these teams of villains to try to take advantage of Superman's weakened state and the world's weakened state to kind of cull and conquer everything, and they have to jump in and stop it. At the end of the day, this was just a really fun superhero story that looks to the future. And purportedly, this is Grant Morrison's last foray into the DC universe. Now,
oh, come on.
When people say that, I always side eye, and I'm like, yeah okay, sure, whatever. I don't think Grant Morrison's career is anywhere close to being ended, and I don't see a world where he would, where they would want to come back and not dabble with some of these characters that they've had a really fun time, obviously manifesting and playing with. There's some great images in this book. On one, you've got essentially Midnighter and Steel crashed the G7 climate summit, where they crashed it because some other baddies were literally crashing it, and they're just back to back, fending off all of these Brainiac-esque inventions, these robots. There's another character that he's called Iron Cross, and he's essentially a Nazi for no other way to put it. I mean, he's called Iron Cross for a reason. Yeah. And Malachi Black has to jump up and just whip his ass all over the place and use this, do the thing that he does where he makes other versions of himself to team up and apparitions and trick everybody. To trick Iron Cross into beating him. And, of course, while he's doing this, Steel comes in and just lays the hammer down in a really, really great series of events. And while he's knocked out, Midnighter runs in and just, checks him in the jaw with his steel boot. So all the violence that you want, these characters play together really, really well. Lois Lane makes an appearance in the 4th issue, and you get to see Lois's interaction with a Superman, and you get the hint that, or you get the understanding that they are not what they used to be, maybe, because he's dedicated so much time into hanging out at Fort Superman and to thwarting the machinations of these villains. But both of them are really, there's this really poignant conversation where they're worried and / talking about their son. Obviously John, who is Superman now, and has taken that mantle. So you really get the feeling that maybe this is not outside of continuity as much as this is just really, really steeped in the future, and that this is a place where DC can go if they want to, and whether or not they will is a way different question. But it feels tethered to what's going on with some of the stuff right now in Superman. And at the end of the book, I think it's true because they leave it open-ended, and I think that you can expect to see the work that Morrison did in this book carry on in the most recent or in the upcoming adventure comics, Action Comics. Excuse me, my brain just fell out of my head. So I think they're going to carry that on in Action Comics. They did a really good job of teaming up these characters too. There's one scene where the Enchantress and Apollo have to work together, which is not something that you would expect to see. Yeah. So I'm all in on this. It was a great 4-issue series. It was really fun to revisit some of these characters. I love the way Superman looks here. I absolutely do. He's still very much he's a big dude, but he has aged very well. He's not in his standard Superman costume, which he kind of has the Kingdom Come S on his chest, but it's more of a bodysuit. It's not the T-shirt version of Superman that we saw from the New 52, but it's an all-in-one super suit. Now, I'm a traditionalist when it comes to Superman. I want to see the underwear. I want to see this, the weightlifter look to him. I like the red, white, and blue, or the red, white, and yellow, the bright colors. This is a darker version because this is a more cynical Superman, I feel like.
Yeah, that bugs me.
Yeah, and so I don't like I wouldn't enjoy it if this were the Superman in the main book.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it in the context of what it is here. I do like my Superman to be a little bit brighter though. And ultimately he gets there. There's a monologue where he reminds you that he still is that Superman. But he's just had to shift the way that he interacts and stuff. So yeah, that's where it leaves off, and really, really interesting to see the cast of characters that he pulls around him. I don't want to spoil it, and so this won't be, but this is to be continued in Action Comics, and there is a character who is a fourth world character that is going to show up in the future that is not the fourth world character that you would think would be the person to try to conquer the universe. So I'll show you just so you know who I'm talking about, but for folks at home, go check out the last page and pick up the whole series because it's a good time. You can't go wrong with Mikel Janin. His art is absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, it is great.
It is kinetic. I think he works digitally. I don't know that to be true, but it feels like a very digital book. I love the way that he draws Steel. I love the way that he draws Midnighter and Apollo. Just the wide sweeps that he does throughout all of this book are fun. The expression that he gives the characters, it'll crack you up because you'll just see the little snark on the face. It's very rare that I'll ever say anything negative about Jordi Belair's coloring, and I really won't in this book. There were some moments in this book though where she's drawing people, like I guess in shadows, and she uses a hue of green that I don't particularly like. There's a scene where Lois Lane, where I didn't know it was Lois Lane because it looks like Gamora. Where there's this hue of green that she's using to shadow and shade people. That doesn't really work for me, so I think that was a miss. But that's really the only critical thing I'll say about the book is this.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, it's and Jordi Belair is an insanely talented, award-winning, wonderful colorist. So I don't know if this was just trying something new or what, and it might work for a lot of people, and maybe it invoked, for me, I've always said color really does the work of, in a book like this, invoking the tone, and maybe that was what she was wanting the tone to be. I wasn't feeling it, and that's fine. No, I don't have to feel everything. She does the same with Clark later on in another picture of the book, gives it kind of a gray-green hue that really washes out, like makes them look almost sickly. Would be great on somebody like Solomon Grundy, but again, that didn't work for me. But that's really the only criticism I have of it. There are some new characters I think invented for the story. At least they were new to me. Curious to see where they go. But this is going to get me to sign on to Action Comics. No. And I'm not a Action Comics or a Superman fan, in the sense of I collect it monthly. But it did its job there, so I want to know where they're going. And I kind of want to know what's happening with John Kent, because even though he's not in this book, it plays a lot with the fact that he is going to be Superman, and he is the new Superman of the world. Obviously there was a bunch of news recently with John Kent coming out as bisexual, or going to be written bisexual in some of the stories. So new ground is being tread for some of these characters, and I'm curious to see where they're going to go. So I'm jumping in. Going to be collecting Superman, which is not something that I regularly say, but I've tried it
throughout the years. He's just hella hard to write.
There's certain arcs that are incredibly great, and then there's some that is just. But I think that's the same is true of Wonder Woman, and that's one of my favorite characters in the DC universe. Like sometimes
it's true of any
George
character.
Perez,
but Superman's just especially hard to write because he's so overpowered.
Well, he's overpowered. He's a god. And he is the moral tether.
Yeah, he's the gold standard of the DC universe, and he is at pure of heart, uncorruptible good guy.
Yeah,
hard to make that interesting consistently.
And the way that you do that, and the way the stories that I've read that do it really well, is the story's not about Superman; it's about the people around Superman, and that to me is always what makes a really compelling superhero or a Superman story.
It's the most compelling ones for me is watching him try to see the best in people.
Yeah.
That there's not that he's trying way too hard to see the best in people, and he has this undying faith in people, and his motivation is helping. Whereas sometimes that's Batman's motivation. Most of the time not.
Yeah.
Most of the time he wants to punish people. Sometimes it's Wonder Woman's motivation. She both wants to punish and help people. Depends on who they are. But Superman, consistently, his character anyway, is he wants to help, not punish. He doesn't like
There's no punitive aspect. And so, like he'll get people in the position to where, like, if they won't hurt other people, and sometimes he will punish them, but he thinks that there's, I guess that's where him and Batman do link up, is Batman. I don't know that Batman thinks that any of these people will ever recover, but he won't kill. I think Superman has this genuine belief that these people there is some type of rehabilitation possible. And
he just thinks they need to be helped.
Yeah. Also, I want to point out that I called the character like 4 different names throughout talking about the story, but the character is Manchester Black.
Okay.
I don't know why I called him every name but that.
Yeah, that got my attention.
Yeah, sorry, that was my bad. But yeah, it's Manchester Black from the Authority, who is arguably a bad guy in a lot of stories. But you juxtapose somebody like Superman with him, who is this. almost a, he's very British, chain smoking, snarky, kind of a punk rock attitude. That
John Constantine.
Yeah, kind of John Constantine. Kind of, you see this outline, this character profile pop up in a lot of stuff. Most of the time written by Morrison or Garth Ennis will also write them. Warren Ellis will write them from time to time. But you juxtapose him with a character like that, goes interesting places. So, yeah, man, I'm excited about it. It was fun little romp. So made me feel good.
Nice.
So defied my expectations, which were, like I said, weird because I didn't know what to expect. My expectations were all over the place. So speaking of expectations, we like to end each and every episode by giving you some books that we expect to be fun to read that are going to come out next week, next Wednesday, next Tuesday, depending on what publisher you get. We have no idea what these books are going to be like unless they're some of the ones that we've gotten preview copies of, but that happens less and less. I really don't think we read many preview copies, and we get them, and we should, but A, time, and B, I think we like to pull stuff off the shelves. And you don't like to read digitally. I'll read digitally every once in a while, but I think we all like to have it in our hands. So, Matt, why don't you tell us a book that you are going to bring home next week?
This looks interesting, from Aftershock. This is by creators Marko Stojanovic and Cynthia Bonovic. So, from across the pond, I'm assuming. The series is called Cross to Bear. Jack the Ripper was never caught because no one was looking for him in the Wild West. No one except the Order, an organization made up of the descendants of crusaders sworn to eradicate the unnatural.
That sounds weird.
Dun, dun, dun.
Jack the Ripper hanging out in Tombstone.
The Wild West.
That's going to be, I don't know how else to call it, but odd. I'm curious. Yeah.
It's funny to me how Europeans are fascinated by the American Wild West.
Well, that's the mythology that we built up.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a unique storytelling atmosphere and device.
Yeah.
To America, the Wild West is a very unique. Setting.
What's funny to me in that setting is that because of we look at the literal shape of America today, or the boundaries of it, and we think the West, Nevada, California, sometimes Texas and stuff, but like the Wild West was like Missouri. Yeah. Like that was the frontier. Yeah, that was. So it's not this. As we go back and watch old cowboy videos now, they tend to show things in the desert, because it was gorgeous landscapes and they could just shoot on it for free.
Well, and that's where criminals went to the West to escape the law. So they were going to Utah, Arizona. Of course, a lot of that was taking place in Colorado. Mm-hmm. People were hunting for gold. But yeah, believe it or not, the Wild West, the brutal Wild West, also happened in Kansas.
Yep. Hey, St. Louis. That's why they call it the Gateway. They got the arch there. So I'm going to grab a book this next week that kind of caught my attention, and it's from the House of Ideas. And it's part of I don't know if you want to call it an event or a crossover or just whatever it is, but it's part of their Darkhold series that they have going on right now. And it's Darkhold Blade #1. I love Blade. That is one of the I haven't enjoyed, as we've covered before. I'm on the record. I haven't enjoyed this recent Avengers run nearly as much as I was hoping I would. One of the highlights is having Blade there. It's weird to say that Blade is Avenger, but it works somehow. That's been interesting and fun. I enjoy the character, so I'm gonna check this out and see what's happening with it. It's Kibble Smith who's writing it, and I enjoy. He put out the Lockjaw series a few years ago that had Lockjaw and D-Man was hanging out in it. Sabatini's doing the art, and Rico Renzi is on the colors. So the synopsis on it is: the King of Death. Are you fanged or are you food? The world is divided into humans and vampires, and Blade, the one who walks between them both and kills with equal impunity. After reading from the cursed Darkhold book, Blade and a cadre of other heroes were meant to enter Scython's dimension. Chthon. It's kind of like a Cthulhu type thing, and stop the ancient god from destroying the multiverse. But reading the book has changed all of their lives and histories, and for Blade, the consequences are far-reaching. Vampires rule the world, and he rules over them all. But there are some heroes left, and Blade is not as omniscient as he thinks. So this caught my attention. Like I said, just Blade. I'm curious to see. They're using him more than they've ever used him before here recently. And so I enjoy that because he's a character that I think is fun to read about. So gonna check that out. We got anything else we need to cover, brother? I feel like we've been successful.
No.
But
I think we did it.
I think we did. As always, it's kind of hard to do when Craig is gone because we have our routine, like we have our way that we do things and bounce back off each other. So it's always interesting when there's that empty chair, because it's, repetition and comfortable. But I think we do it okay.
Yeah. We do it.
Yep, it gets accomplished and published, so that's a thing. You can come back and check more of this out if you have enjoyed the last hour or so hanging out with us. Every Sunday we drop new episodes, so be on the lookout for that. Like and subscribe. If you listen to us on YouTube, hit the little button that you can hit, and it'll ding every time it comes up. There's nothing to watch there, but you can hear us. I guess so, yeah. There's something that you can push that will alert you when new episodes drop. If you listen to us on however iTunes does their thing now, like they have their own special app for podcasts, weird. But you can leave a rating and review on both of those places. We would greatly appreciate it. It lets us know how we're doing, but it also, little algorithms that run the digital world, it'll help push it a little bit more and help us reach a broader audience, and we would enjoy that. If you want to kind of see some of the ephemera that goes on with this, come to our Facebook group. You can like us there, and you can see where people post. They're posting, what new stuff they're buying. They're posting what they're watching, the video games they're playing. Con season is ramping back up, and people are showing off like little treasures that they pick up at different conventions, which is always cool. Kind of see what your fellow comic book friends are doing. You can go on our Instagram page and our Twitter page. We're at SFG Podcast on both of those to see pictures of what we're reading, people that we're talking to. And, of course, you can always shoot us an email at southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com if you have something you want to say off the air. So we hope you'll do all those things. We really appreciate your time and your attention. And, this has been a really fun 200 episodes of this ride. And we ain't done yet.
Ain't done yet.
Not can't stop, won't stop. Not at all. So, as usual, go forth and love some comics.
And watch Dune in the theaters.
Yep.
We need it. We need to fund part 2.
I don't think they're going to have a problem getting funding.
We need them to feel good about funding part 2 is a better way to say that.
Yeah. Dude, there's a lot of people flocking to see this film. Rightfully so. All right, kids.